Hey friends and book lovers, welcome. I figured since I did a reading goals video at the beginning of this year, I thought I would do a mid-year check-in just to see where I'm at, just to see if I'm on track with all the goals that I committed to and if I'm still doing as well as I feel like I'm doing. I didn't set too many reading goals. I feel like I gave myself a healthy amount of about 4 or 5, maybe 6 reading goals for the year. A lot of them kind of went with each other, so it was kind of like interwoven goals that just made a lot of sense. And then I did a couple of, top 10 series to read, top 11 books to read for the year, and I kind of want to see where I'm at with those, which I think I'm a little more unsuccessful in that realm, but we'll definitely see in this video. So for the first part of this video, I'm gonna start off with the reading goals and I'm just gonna get right into it. The first one that I had was to read like a specific number of books this year, which I think everyone has that goal. Goodreads makes it a goal if you want to participate in like the reading challenge for the year. And then last year, I think my reading challenge was like 50 books and I made it to like 57 books in 2020. It was kind of like a tough year at parts where I just didn't feel motivated to read, but I figured that I could definitely do 60 this year if I pushed myself. And I'm trying to do 60 actual novels instead of doing like 60 novels and or manga. Of course, there's gonna be some manga within that 60, but the majority will be novels. Even if they're middle grade, even if they're YA, I still count them, It all works out in the end. And so far, as of the end of June, which is pretty much the mid-year point, I have read 42 out of 60 books, and I think only one of them was a graphic novel, which is amazing. I was so excited and proud of myself. I think a few of them were definitely middle grades, but they were really well worth it, and I am just so happy that I got to read them. They're just such good books. If you want to see what one of my favorite middle grades was this year, it was really surprising. I will link my mid-year freakout tag down below and in the card so y'all can check that out because I do talk about one in there, and if you are looking for a great middle grade, it's a really good one. So I'm really proud of the amount of books that I read. I feel like I'm definitely gonna get to 60. I probably will surpass that goal. And I'm actually excited to see how many books I'll be able to read in total. I am not going to update my Goodreads goal to anything above 60 just because that was my initial goal. I'm gonna stick to it, and anything that goes over that is just wonderful for me. I am just really happy that I've read 42 books. I don't actually know how I did that in half a year, but maybe the downtime helped. And I did read some really good books, so that really helped too. The other big goal of mine was to expand the genres that I read. So I mostly read fantasy with some sci-fi, and I'll read a couple of nonfiction books here and there. I had a goal of reading 1 nonfiction book a month, and I think out of 6 months, I've only read one of the months that I read a nonfiction book, and that was back in January, and it was quite a short one. I haven't read a nonfiction book pretty much since then. I don't think that goal hasn't been fulfilled, and I just really want to get on that. I just want to have a book that I'm reading, even if I'm not binge reading it like I would a fantasy story. I can have a nonfiction book that I am reading and taking slowly, and I want to see if I can incorporate more of those. I feel like nonfiction books, especially ones where there's a lot of learning content, can really help with any skill set improvement or just kind of widening horizons. So I really do still want to try to make the most of that goal since I have about 5 months left in the year. Not so great with that goal, but we're still gonna try. And then in terms of the genre update in general, I did want to add some more horror novels. I haven't really read any horror. I'm definitely a wimp when it comes to that. I wanted to add more sci-fi. I definitely wanted to add, more classics, more contemporaries. And I'm happy to say that when it comes to contemporaries and like novels that are just kind of, I read one that was written in verse, and I'm in the process of reading another that's written in verse. All of those are contemporary novels. They're fiction, but they're contemporary, and I'm happy to say that I've kind of gotten a little more into that genre. It's not my absolute favorite all the time, but I'm definitely getting more into that genre. I've also gotten into the fantasy romance genre, which is like a subgenre of fantasy itself, and I'm really enjoying that journey for myself, as I don't generally read a lot of fantasy romance, and I don't generally gravitate towards that area naturally, but now that I'm discovering that I'm enjoying it, I'm finding a lot more good picks, and I will be doing like a video on that soon because I think it's really interesting what I've read so far. In case any of y'all are interested in fantasy romance, that will be coming out soon, but I was really happy to see that I have delved into some of those other genres. I will say I was supposed to read a horror novel earlier this year and I didn't get to that one and I was a little disappointed, and I haven't yet read any classics. But on that note, at least for the classics, we do have a Count of Monte Cristo read-along planned for 3 months because we're reading the unabridged version. So I feel like I'm gonna get at least one classic in this year, and it's gonna be a hefty one. So that's really exciting. I still feel like I have half the year to kind of read a few more in the different genres and see what I like, what I dislike. Of course, recommendations are always welcome, especially because I don't know much about other genres besides fantasy and some sci-fi, but I feel really good things about it. Also, October is coming up, so I feel like I'm gonna read more spooky reads around that time, which I'm thrilled about. Speaking of being thrilled, I did want to read some thrillers, and I actually have like a small shelf up here with thrillers and a couple of Stephen King novels that I want to get to, and I still haven't gotten them, but there is going to be more widening of my genre horizons this year. I can feel it. It just has happened very slowly. The next goal that I had was to read more self-published books because I wanted to find some really great self-published authors. I feel like a lot of booktube talks about the hyped up, super popular authors, but we don't always give as much attention to the self-published authors, which can be just as good, if not better, than a really hyped up popular author. There's also the Shelf Published In Discord, which they do a self-published book each month. I tried doing the first couple months with them and my TBRs were just crazy. So I think I only participated in 2 of those months this year. But all in all, as of June, I've read 6 self-published books, and I thought that was really, really good. That was a lot more than I was expecting. That's about 1 a month, which is great. And I just want to keep on that trend. I think that I was lucky in that I found some self-published authors that I really do enjoy. Like Elise Kova's books are really fun to read, and that just makes reading a self-published book that much more fun. There's also a lot of really interesting and fun self-published books in the fantasy romance genre, so it kind of makes it easy to kind of marry those two together. Fantasy romance isn't the only self-published that I've read. I've read also just regular fantasy on the self-published scale, which has been really great. And so for that goal, I'm pretty happy and impressed with myself. I think I've done a phenomenal job, and I can't wait to keep going with the self-published reads. And then I also did videos which were the top 10 series that I want to read this year and the top 11 books that I wanted to read this year, which are both going very poorly. Out of the 10 series that I wanted to finish this year, I've only read and started 1 of those 10. I haven't even started the other 9. I had tried to start so many of those so many times, and then just other things happened, like readathons or mood reading or other series just got in the way. And it's crazy how you have these goals of series to read in the beginning of the year, and then you get bogged down with, oh my god, all these other series that you feel like you have to read, and it just takes over your life. It really took over my life. It's incredible for fantasy readers what series can just completely take over your life. So I only did 1 out of 10 of those. And then for the top 11 books that I wanted to read this year, just regular books, standalones on their own, I have done a little bit better there. I've done 3 out of 11, so that hasn't been too bad. I still have a few of those on my list to finish this year or to read this year, and I feel like I'm getting pretty far. However, I do not think that I'm gonna get to all 10 series and all 11 books for this year that I had planned, so some of these might move on to 2022 depending on how important I feel like they are to read, but so far so good. We'll see what happens. Either way, it's just nice to have had a set list in case I ever got stuck anywhere and like, what should I read next? I could have referred to these lists, but as you can see, I have tons and tons of books that I have to get through still. A lot of these are read, but a lot of them are unread, so there's always that too. The next one was an easy one. It was just to take out less library books and to read more of my stash, which actually I have been doing. Though my stash is growing because book buying and book reading, as we know, are 2 separate hobbies, and I happen to have both of them, which is why I needed to make this giant library for myself because I need place for more books. And the fact that these shelves aren't even filled makes me want to buy more books. So there's like a whole other problem, but I know that I have been taking out way less library books than usual. I will only really take them out if I want to do an audiobook version of it and I don't want to pay for the audiobook version because I have a physical copy and I just want to borrow it from the library, so I've done that. Or like the ebook version if I can find it easily, if I'm traveling and I have the physical copy of a book but I don't want to bring that with me because it's heavy, it's hard to travel with many books, then I'll borrow the ebook version from the library, which I've done for a few of my books. But I don't technically count that because I feel like it's still shopping my stash and not taking out different books from the library. However, the library is helping me with my stash, so it doesn't count. And we're gonna leave it at that. And then my next goal was just to get a better understanding of my taste. I feel like I started back up in reading a few years ago, and though I read a lot, I feel like a little bit lost within what my taste should be, especially in the beginning of the year. I was reading books I didn't think I was gonna like, but I ended up loving, and books that I thought I was going to love, I ended up just feeling very mediocre about them. And so I thought, well, I should probably figure out what my taste is and go from there. And it's been really helpful. I've read very many different things, I feel, this year that I wouldn't normally pick up, partly because of book friends, partly because of BookTube, partly because of new releases, and it is helping me figure out exactly what I do like. And the more I widen my horizons in different genres, the more I'm going to hone in my taste with those genres as well. But when it comes to the fantasy genre, I feel like I have a pretty good handle on what I'm really going to fall in love with versus what I'm just going to think is okay. And that's pretty great. That's pretty cool to see me knowing my bookish self even better. So that's it for this video. I didn't have a ton of goals for this year, but I felt like I made a healthy dent in the goals that I did set for myself, besides of course the top 10 and 11 books and series that I wanted to read, but that's another story. I'm pretty proud of where I am, especially the number of books that I've read, and all the books that I didn't think I was gonna read but ended up reading has been quite the journey. So I am really happy about that. I would love to hear how your year has been going in terms of any reading goals you might have had and any successes or failures that you feel like you're having at the moment in your own maybe mid-year or quarterly check-in with yourself if you do that. So comment down below. And if you like this video, please click the like button. That really does help me a lot. And if you want to see more of my content, please don't hesitate to subscribe.